Welcome to our professional studies video on feedback. The Education Endowment Foundation stated that feedback has the biggest positive impact upon children in comparison to other learning methods, and we decided that such a big claim was worth investigating. The fact that there is an 8+ month impact highlights how significant feedback can be for a child's development. Furthermore, the EEF highlighted that feedback is a low-cost intervention policy which is relatively easy to implement in all schools and is therefore accessible for everyone. We also thought that researching feedback would enhance our own professional development. We are now going to discuss some of the positive aspects of implementing feedback within the classroom as highlighted in our research.
The majority of the research that we discovered found that feedback is the most effective way to improve performance and achievement in comparison to reducing class sizes and setting more homework. This is supported by Hattie, who in 2009 found that feedback had twice the average effect when improving achievement at 0.79 in comparison to 0.40. 0.40 provided a benchmark figure from which to judge the various influences on achievement. This highlights how prominent feedback is as a tool to improve learning.
An important dimension of feedback is its immediacy. The longer the time gap between the completion of the work and its feedback, the less effective the feedback becomes. Ideally, feedback should be provided within minutes after the completion of a task, for example, after a student asks or answers a question. Teachers can use non-verbal gestures to indicate their intention by nodding their heads, using facial expressions or hand gestures to prompt the student to continue, or they can adopt a physical stance that signals their readiness to move on. Teachers should vary these reactions to their students' answers. They can restate what the student has said to reinforce the point, ask for clarification, invite the student to elaborate, acknowledge the student's contribution but ask for another view, or nod their heads but remain silent.
We are now going to discuss the cons of using feedback as an intervention strategy. One of the key limitations of feedback can in fact render the process worthless. As Black and William note, feedback that draws attention away from the task and towards self-esteem can have a negative effect on attitudes and performance. In other words, it is important that students understand that feedback is an evaluation not of the person but of the performance in context. This holds true whether the feedback derives from an external source or is generated through self-assessment.
In the study by Yang, Badger and Yu, they found that teacher feedback was less successful than peer feedback. Teacher feedback was accepted as such but proved to be associated with misinterpretation and miscommunication, whereas reservations regarding the accuracy of peer feedback induced a discussion about the interpretation. Students' reservations prompted them to search for confirmation by checking instruction manuals, asking the teacher, and forming more self-corrections. As a result, students acquired a deeper understanding of the subject. In contrast, teacher feedback lowered students' self-corrections. Perhaps students assumed that the teacher had addressed all errors and no further corrections were required. Feedback can be effective when the learner understands the feedback and is willing and able to act on it. The student's ability or willingness to do this might depend on the emotional impact of the feedback, a student's pedagogic intelligence, or the student's past experiences.
There are many ways that feedback can be implemented within a classroom. Written feedback is key when marking children's work. It is essential that teachers include detailed feedback which not only shows what the child has achieved, but also how they can improve. For example, the teacher could state, "Good use of the adjective beautiful, but can you think of any other wow words to use?" Additionally, verbal feedback, such as "Good job, Lauren," is effective for immediacy and its self-esteem, but it often doesn't provide a way for how the child can improve in the future.
To conclude, feedback is clearly a valuable form of intervention. Feedback is an essential part of effective learning within the classroom, and it gives pupils a better understanding of how to improve their work. Feedback is linked with children's achievement, but this also correlates with the quality of the feedback given. Overall, feedback can improve a student's confidence, self-awareness and enthusiasm for learning, and is an essential element of developing the learning of each and every child within the classroom.